Hello, this is the fourth video in the series about the next steps for your congregation regarding vitality. So hopefully you've been working along in the workbook and you've just taken a look at the cycle of the congregation. You've had some conversation about where you are now and where you've been and kind of what's next for you. So now what I want to share with you is so what, right? So now we know where we are in our cycle and we understand that there's interactions between the things that happen and turn over quickly in our congregation and the things that are more steady and slower. That is important, though, because it determines the kinds of change you're ready to make right now in your congregation and the kind of change you need to make. And so let's take a look at that. This is going to continue on page 5 of your workbook if you want to follow along. When you are at a place in your congregation, when you're in that blue line, you're moving up and you kind of know who you are and you're building on that, then the kinds of change you're going to consider are going to follow basically the strategic planning model, which many of you are probably very familiar with. Sometimes this is also called the technical change model. So here, it's simple. You identify the problem. So in our example, the problem is our youth director has quit and we need a new one. The solution? We need a new one. So we create a plan. We're going to come up with a job description. Maybe we'll tweak it from what it was before a little bit. We'll put it out there, whatever, right? We have a plan. We implement the plan, and then we hire somebody, and was it successful? Yes, no, yeah. Okay. We know how this works, and we like it because we know what it's going to look like when it's done. We know where we're going, and we know if we're successful before we even start. We kind of know where it's going. And so the thing about this model, though, is that it assumes some things. It assumes we have a clear problem and a clear solution and goal. We know those things. It also assumes that there are some known steps in how to achieve it. Like we know how to hire somebody. We know, job description, the ones I just described. It also assumes, well, the thing about it is it's limited by the imagination you have. So it's limited by your current definitions of what is success and what the problem is and what the solution could possibly be. That's fine if you're in a place in your congregation where you're building on who you are. But it doesn't work so well if you're not sure anymore. If maybe you're in that place in that curve coming around the other way, if you're kind of feeling stuck, if the things you've always done aren't working anymore, then this approach may not be for you, because otherwise you'll just do what you've always done. And if that isn't working, maybe you need to try something different. That's when we get into something called adaptive change. So adaptive change is going through this different kind of process. It's that part, remember there's the box, we're trying to get out of our box. Our imaginations are limited by the way we've always done things. And we aren't going to have a different solution in mind because we don't really know what else to do. And we can't figure that out until we let go of how things have always been. And we open ourselves up to maybe what God's calling us to next. And so we have to be able to take steps forward, not knowing where we're going, so that God can reveal new ideas. And that's what this cycle here looks like, this arrow. So it starts at a point of pain. It doesn't work. The things we've always done doesn't work. And now we're kind of in a crisis situation because our youth director left. But we have this possibility, this hope that maybe there is a way forward, that maybe God could call us to something else. Maybe we're in a place where we just don't have any more youth or not enough to really require a full-time director anymore. So we can be more creative, but we still want to do ministry for our youth. And so in this case, we're pulled forward by the idea of possibility, and we start to take steps. We start to move forward. But the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to confront your box. Your box is the limit of your imagination. You're going to try something that you thought was obvious and made sense, and it won't work. And when it doesn't work, instead of saying, well, I guess we shouldn't try that again, you need to reflect on that and ask yourself, what assumptions were going into that decision to try that? And maybe it's not just that we did it wrong. Maybe there's some big, deeper assumption that we need to challenge. Maybe, doing a joint youth ministry in your congregation doesn't make sense. No one's coming. Why not? Maybe because youth aren't interested in coming to church for youth ministry anymore, at least not in your community. There's a lot of different reasons. But it's opening up that box that's going to take you the next step. Unfortunately, the next step isn't the solution. It's the wilderness, okay? In the wilderness, you're going to stumble around a little bit, and you're going to try and figure out what's next. And eventually, you'll hit another box. And then when you come out of that box, you'll move into the wilderness again, and that cycle's going to continue. It's going to continue all the way down and around and up until you're over in the other part of that curve, where eventually God will present you a new and creative choice. And you will see it as the solution you've been looking for. Had you seen that solution back when this whole thing started, you probably wouldn't have done it, or you wouldn't have believed it, because it was beyond the scope of what you could imagine. But now, after this trial and error period, you're going to say, oh, this is what we need to be. And that's when the whole cycle starts over again. I hope that makes some sense. We're going to talk more about that in a minute, but before we do, I want you to take a look at page 5 of your workbook and have some conversation about the questions there. And that's going to be, I'm going to share that with you real quick. There we go. So page 5, I want you to talk about what kind of change are you experiencing as a congregation now? And in the past, what kind of change have you experienced? So have you been through a time of adaptive change before, or no? Maybe this is the first time and it feels a little bit scary, but that's what I want you to talk about here for just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video, and then when you're done with that conversation, come on back for the next round.